Alright, hello everyone. This is Jasmine, and today I'm going to be talking about the MVP. Okay, so I'm going to go over what the high level of what an MVP means. MVP refers to the phrase minimum viable product. I know in sports it means most valuable player, but in this context, it's basically the bare minimum amount of game necessary for you to still have a game. Your MVP should really only have your core game mechanic and not much else. When creating your game in the early stages, really ask yourself what the core of your game is going to be and build around that vision. The goal is to really capture the essence of your gameplay, and in the vast majority of cases, you can boil a game down to a 30-second window of fun, and that would be the core of your game. On the right here, you can see a clip of Celeste. Obviously, this is from the final game, so take the polish and visuals with a grain of salt. But you can see that this 10-second loop essentially captures the majority of the game. So what's the point of the MVP? The MVP is there to really help you focus in when designing your game. When building a game idea, you have to have a solid foundation, because if you build off a foundation that's kind of hazy and not very well fleshed out, that's the quickest way to doom a project. And in this example of Celeste over here, if you were really building this for your MVP, it would probably just be like a lot of gray boxes instead of the platforms here. You probably wouldn't even have spikes, because those hazards you can add in later. You probably wouldn't even have a collectible. The MVP of Celeste would probably just be, a gray box as your character, and then you being able to dash in the air once. Alright, so you might be asking yourself, how do I go about finding my 30 seconds of fun? Well, the first thing you want to do is define your core gameplay loop. So we've had a lecture on this before, but if you need a reminder, the core gameplay loop is essentially the most important defining part of your game that comes up over and over again. Next, go ahead and throw away anything that doesn't relate directly to the core gameplay loop. And then lastly, throw away some more things, because I'm willing to wager that you probably still kept too many things. It's hard to trim the extra fat out of your game idea, but this is key to building a solid game foundation. So down here in Slay the Spire, you can see this clip. The game has a lot going on. You've got on the top here, you've got potions, relics, and there's a crazy amount of UI, a lot of animations. It's very pretty. But if you were going to build an MVP for this game, well, the core gameplay loop of Slay the Spire is being able to play cards, kill enemies, and repeat, right? So in your core gameplay loop, or in your MVP, all it would have is the ability to play cards and kill enemies. And that would be it. Forget all the buttons, all the UI, all the potions, the health, all of that. Playing cards and be able to defeat enemies is the only thing you need in your MVP. Let's step away from video games for a second to discuss a more traditional game. What would be the minimum amount of work you would need to have chess be a workable, functioning game? I'd argue that there are only two mechanics needed, moving and capturing. You can remove unit diversity, remove the different movesets of the pieces, and so on. The basics of chess is that you're moving friendly pieces to go and capture enemy pieces. It's easy to get carried away when building a game. You might get excited and then want to build from the ground up, system by system, until you fulfill your amazing design vision. However, this is absolutely the wrong way to build an MVP. Layer by layer building makes it so that you'll never really have a cohesive and clean product until it's completely done. On the other hand, on your right side, you'll see we have a thin slice of the pyramid which touches on every part. As a game, it might not be the most exciting to play, but at least it's built. It's a scaled down version of the original vision that you had in mind, and you can slowly sweep across the pyramid, expanding on what's existing instead of floundering around on things you won't see tangibly. As an example for a platformer, building layer by layer would be trying to develop your movement system and perfecting that, and then going to develop all your enemy types and enemy behaviors, and then when you finish your enemy behaviors, you finally go design your levels. When you finally design all of your levels, then, and so on and so forth. You don't want to do that. If you are going to build a platformer, how you should do your MVP is do a little bit of your movement system so that you have, the general platformer elements such as jumping, but don't refine it too much. Don't make it feel too good, because that's not too important in the MVP stage. Design one enemy, design one level, and then maybe have a little UI if you want, and that would be your MVP. Just a tiny sliver of what your final game is going to be like, but at least you have something cohesive. I can't stress this enough, you want your game to be playable. You don't want to add pieces one after the other that won't ever end in a finished product until it's literally done. Not only will this help you be sane, but it'll be good for playtesting as well. You can't get playtest feedback if your game literally doesn't work. So I think this picture summarizes it really well. You don't want to be assembling the car piece by piece like this. You want to be evolving from the skateboard to the car over time. And again, going back to that platformer example, if you flesh out the movement system first, and that'll take a long time, right, to perfect it, and you go into the playtest with just, being able to jump off a platform. Well, there's not much to playtest there, right? On the other hand, if you built it, if you built it like this, touching a little bit of everything, you have a little bit of the movement system, one enemy, a little bit of the level. Then in the playtest, sure, the movement might not feel that great and the enemies aren't that diverse, but at least you have a functioning game. And when people playtest it, they can give you feedback on, what's working and what's not, and you can use that information to go and develop it further. But at least you have something to playtest, essentially. Alright, so how about some more complex games? If you were going to build an MVP for this game, for these games, how would you go about it? In Skyrim, I'd say the core gameplay loop would be something like just being able to move, attack, and loot. That'll make up the majority of the gameplay. So when you're making your MVP, really focus in on that cycle. And for Persona 5, the gameplay loop is something like being able to enter turn-based battles and then switch between like the visual novel part of the game. So when you're building the MVP for that, you don't need things like all this fancy UI and stuff, and you don't need things like the relationship system. Those can come later after you've built your MVP. And again, please, 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 I can't stress this enough. Have a clear and solid MVP as your foundation. Building on shaky foundations never works well. This is especially important because inevitably, most of you guys will have to scale back your game. And if you're building a car piece by piece instead of evolving from a skateboard to a car, scaling back could be really deadly to your game because you'll really have nothing left if you scale back. So you can always expand on your game once you have your MVP. Building in this way leaves you to be open-minded to new ideas, as well as keeping you flexible and resilient in case any problems crop up. And lastly, remember always to have a working prototype somewhere. Version control software such as Git or Colab is great for this. You don't want to be making changes the day of a playtest and then boom, everything is gone. And again, this little GIF right here shows you what an MVP for Mario Kart might look like. And even now, this MVP, this clip is a little bit too polished to be an MVP. If you were really making an MVP for Mario Kart, this car would probably just be a gray box, and you wouldn't have all these particle effects and the little wheel turning and the light here with the shadow and the fancy road. It would literally just be being able to turn and drive on a road. That would be your MVP for Mario Kart. And if you'd like, the breakout room activity is to take a game and then create an MVP for it. Or not physically create, but think about how, if you were going to develop this game, how you would build the MVP. What features would be in your MVP, and what features are you going to add later? And yeah, that's the end of this lecture. Have a nice rest of your day, guys.